All right, and we are live. Welcome, everyone, especially our panelists here. We're going to do a bit of intros and then we're going to get started. But before, I'm just going to do some housekeeping. It is a live stream, so please leave some questions in the chat. We have some questions already, so we're going to go through those first and then save the questions that you guys leave in the chat to the very end. But let's go ahead and kick it off with some intros here. So I'm going to use my screen. I see Dennis in my top left. Why don't we start with you? A very short 1 to 2 minute intro if you want to share that, Dennis.
Yeah. Brian, thanks for having me on here. Excited to talk to you and this group of experts on AI and vibe coding. But yeah, my name is Dennis Lim. I'm Associate Director of Product Management here at Chewy. Also a pharmacist, I think, like everyone else in this group. Brian and I work together at the famous World Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And since then, we've migrated out of pharmacy proper and kind of in various areas. And so um, I think I've been in product management around 4 years now, give or take. And so excited to talk about how product management changes with the advent of AI and large language models and vibe coding. So also noticed that I misspelled my title. And so I just used to manage product before. Now I'm a product manager. Right. So
Okay. Excited to have you on, Dennis. Thanks for the introduction. I see Zane next. You want to give a little intro?
Yeah, sure. Thanks again for having me on. Yeah, my name is Zan Sayed. I am a product manager at Syncora. I'm the head of their clinical products there, clinical analytics products there. I am also a pharmacist by training, spent 10 years in the oncology space, mainly outpatient side, and I've been in the product role for 3 years now. And yeah, really excited about this discussion. Pretty much play with AI agents for all day long. So.
Okay. Yeah, it should be very exciting to see how you guys are using it. Well, thanks, Zane, for the intro. Always good having you on. Dave, you want to share a little bit about yourself?
I'm obviously a Gator fan. It's March Madness. Go Gators, everybody.
Go Gators.
Yeah, my name is Dave Berkowitz. I'm product manager. I work at Omnicell. We sell cabinets. If you're not familiar, we sell cabinets that hold medications in hospitals. Also a pharmacist by background. And this whole group here, we have a pretty robust chat going on nonstop. We're all pharmacists and product, and we like to meet with each other and learn. So yeah, we're here too. We thought we would be live and have our discussions live so other people could benefit from it. So yeah, I've worked for Omnicell for about almost 7 years. I've been in product management about 4. I've also worked for a couple of startups. Prior to coming to Omnicell, I was a hospital administrator at Mass General Brigham in Boston, and prior to that, I was a clinical pharmacist, like way in the right at the bedside, like in the weeds. So I'm excited. AI is it's here. It's amazing. I use it every single day on like almost everything I do, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Likewise. Thanks for the introduction, Dave. Very excited to see where the conversation is going to go. Definitely leave your questions in the chat. And by the way, for those who are in the chat, tell us where you're from, your name, what kind of AI agents you are using today. So I have just a short list of questions because I imagine you guys are going to have a lot of things to say. And I do want to get as much of your perspectives as possible. One other note is that Kevin does have a conflict. Kevin would have been with us today, but he may join a little late. So we may have him as a surprise guest. So stay tuned for that. One other thing before we start with the question is there's a lot of different references. I would try to leave them in the chat whenever people mention them, just so you know, so you guys have those references ready. Okay, let's kick it off with the very first question. And these questions, by the way, are a little long, so I'm going to speak slow. I spent a lot of time researching this, so I want people to appreciate the questions I have. But I'm going to ask the very first question, which is basically the definition of AI. So let me read this to you guys. So the term vibe coding, which is the topic for today, was coined by Andrej Karpathy in February 2nd, 2025, in a Twitter post. You can go ahead and read it. Where he says vibe coding is to give into the vibes, forget the code even exists, hit accept all, and then he also notes that it's great for throwaway projects, but it's not really coding, and it mostly works. So we just actually passed the 1-year mark of from that post, and Andre made a new post just about a month ago, and then he says something a little interesting, and it says, in reflecting on what he tweeted a year ago and the capabilities of LLMs to be low enough that it be used for fun throwaway projects, but now they have evolved to be the default workflow for professionals with more oversight and scrutiny. He also said individuals are trying to come up with a new term to differentiate it from vibe coding. And his new favorite term to use is agentic engineering. Agentic because you aren't writing code directly 99% of the time. Rather, you're orchestrating the agent, and then you kind of act as the oversight. And then engineering, because there is a art and science and expertise to it, and it's something you can learn and become better at. So with that question, I will love from each of you guys to kind of reflect on it and react to either of those two posts. And then the main question I want to hear from you, because it's a strong debate online, is that definition that Andre used kind of what you're doing and how you would describe it? So we're going to start backwards this time. Let's start with you, David. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. So my perspective is that, so I've seen some big changes in how powerful these models are in the last 6 months. Maybe about a year ago, I was kind of skeptical. I would, I'm not an engineer, right? I have, prior to this job, I have training in data science. I understand code, depending on the language. I can proofread code. I can proofread pretty well in Python and SQL. But so today, I could quite easily, I think, let's take like Intuit, right? Let's take like something like some SaaS platform. I'm pretty confident in about 5 hours I could write a brand new platform that can do what Intuit does. And that's very different than maybe a year ago, where I would like it would take more time to get the user experience right or whatever. Now it's just it's really kind of miraculous, and I could see it being to the point that companies like large SaaS platforms that can be probably easily disrupted, because I could see people just coming in and being like, why am I paying all this money for this SaaS platform? I could just vibe code it to my exact workflows and business processes and be done. I don't think I answered your question about vibing, but I think it's more of like the system, this, like, let's say Claude, right? It knows exactly what you want, what you need. If you want to build a piece of software, it'll know how to package it. It'll know how to build a database. It'll know how to deploy it. Like it does everything for you. You just have to like kind of know how to prompt it. I wouldn't say it's ready for, say, like my mom to create some sort of Mahjong app or whatever. Like I don't think that she'd be able to do it, but someone who has like sort of any familiarity with how to build software, I think could build it. I can't say for sure how good it would be if you start having, like, if you're at scale and you have lots of users and you have to, troubleshoot bugs. I haven't tested it for there, but I can say it does a pretty good job up front building just generalized SaaS platforms.
Okay. Zane, why don't we get your thoughts here?
Yeah, no. So I think now I think I agree with Andre a lot, because even when I started about a year and a half ago doing all this stuff, like really trying to get into code. So I'm not an engineer by any stretch of the imagination. I taught myself Python like during the COVID days because I needed something to do, and it was something I wanted to do. And I've created a couple of like really small dashboards and things. So that's kind of like my background in coding. I'm like very, very novice. Like I would probably like a 100 level course in college, but having that little background helps quite a bit because I think in the beginning it was just like, everyone was trying to one shot everything, and then that's kind of like the vibe coding aspect of it, right? Like, hey, I just want to build this thing, and you're just trying to just shove as many words or lack of words, and you just let the AI kind of just decide what it wants to decide and whether you like it or not. And a lot of times in the beginning it was like restarting projects. I remember one project that I was building, I had to restart because the code base got so disastrous like 10 times. And I got pretty far, but it was just to a point. But now it's to a point now. I think I've also thought about, like, what do you call it now, like AI assisted coding, or agentic engineering, agentic code, whatever it is now, whatever's decided on. I think it's gotten a lot better. Like I've been able to build like pretty large code bases now. Like I'm building like a personal family chat app because I was just like, hey, I just want to build something. I built a handful of SaaS platforms just for my use only, because I mean, they are SaaS platform. I'm not selling them, but I mean, I just use them on a daily basis for myself, right? And I don't think I could have done it like maybe a year ago to the degree that I can now. And I think, kind of going what was said before, I think if you have a little bit of background in coding right now and you kind of understand like how to build a product from an engineering standpoint. Again, I'm not an engineer, but just being a product manager, just interacting with engineers and things like that, you kind of understand like what is the workflow kind of, right? And then you can I also ask like the agents, like, hey, what should we do next? Does this make sense or whatever? Like I literally having conversation with them as I'm going to kind of fill in the gaps that I don't have. But I think we're getting really close to the point where maybe your grandmother can pick it up and build a mahjong app, right? I mean,
Yeah.
after I finish this thing, I'm going to be hopefully working on another project that will hopefully get us closer to that. But again, just mainly for my own personal use. But yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty exciting where it is now. I mean, just leaps and bounds from just like like 6 months ago, I would even say, like, when Sonnet 4.6 came out,
Mhm.
that was kind of like, whoa. And now you have like, it's pretty nuts right now what's going on and how fast it's moving. But yeah.
I have like 5 different side gigs because I have always had these ideas, but then I would have to like bootstrap it. I would need to get funding, or but now it's like the barrier to entry is so low.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the key. The barrier to entry for your ideas is super low. And now the problem is differentiation, right? Like everyone usually has great ideas. It's usually how you execute it. And so the next phase to this question of yours, Brian, is I think vibe coding is here. I think probably within a year, like your grandmother can make that mahjong app. But is it going to be as slick and pretty as a Zane created mahjong app? And that's, I think, probably where differentiation and product management still comes back. But I think the ability to get something functional out there in the world is super low with vibe coding now.
Yeah, and I think that what people stops right. I think the biggest thing that's stopping people right now, and this is what I get stuck into, is just like bugs, right? Like you'll type in something, you'll add a new feature in, right? And then you'll do like code reviews. Like I'm doing code reviews, and not me personally, like I'm having the agents, like the better agents doing the code review, and you're having it run these scripts and something's broken and you're like seeing, oh my God, something's weird's happening. Now you kind of have to go back and figure out what the hell's going on. But for me, it's a little bit over, like it's above my head. So I'm trying to like, prompt it. So those kind of traps, I think, is where a lot of people get stuck in if you don't have a little bit of a technical background. And I agree with Dennis in terms of the product management side. I think with product managers, we're uniquely in a position where we are supposed to empathize. I know empathy is used a lot, but with the user, right? The UI and UX of the user. And sometimes these agents will come up with something that you're like, yeah, that does not work in any way, shape, or form.
It functionally works, but is it for the right experience? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A big part of like some of the debate over the term of vibe coding is like, maybe Zane, you touched on it a bit. People who don't even look at the code, it seems like each of you are kind of looking at the code a bit, versus people who just like literally your whole interaction is interacting with the LLM. You're not looking at the code. You don't care what it does. You just talk to it and assume it works. but definitely has changed a lot since. Before we move on to the next question, did you have any other comments, Dennis, in response to that one? Seems like you more or less agreed with most of the thoughts here.
Yeah, I think at the time in which that term was coined, vibe coding, to Zane's point, I don't know that necessarily the models were as performant and could create what I think, for example, Cloud Code, Opus 4.6 Pro, can't do today, right? And so that's a big difference between now and then. And I would say, when you think about agentic engineering, what is the differentiator? Today, vibe coding, I think anyone can create an application. However, it's probably not going to be production ready. Where I see kind of the bleeding edge of this in this agentic engineering experience is now that, to Zane's point, one of the hardest parts is getting your edge cases correct. It's all those little bugs, because you can effectively 1 to 2 shot an application today. I did that like 2 weekends ago when I was frustrated with like Chase Reserve and Amex Platinum. It's like they're just basically coupon books at this point. And so I'm like, what if I wanted to create an app that tells me what is the best card to use at any given time with all the offers that are out there? And it two-shotted that experience in an hour, but it took me 6 hours to figure out how to migrate from a local storage database to deployed into Vercel on a cache system. And so that's where it's interesting. So if you have unlimited funds, you can just burn credits and eventually figure it out, right? But if you're a bootstrapped, startup person that has limited credits, you can't do that, right? And so that I think is right now kind of the upper limit of, because they're still expensive, these credits, and so you do need agentic systems to be efficient in that regard. So
another thing that for product managers, where we shine in this space is like the business value, right, too, and also the viability, because it isn't, even though you could create an app, does anyone actually want it? Is there a willingness to pay for it? And it's not free to host these things, right? So there are costs involved. So then you have to look at the business viability, and that's like, I've had a couple ideas which I thought were great, but then I do like a market sizing, look at what I think I could do, willingness to pay on. Granted, I am working with like Copilot, right, to go through and figure out, like, help me. That's something I'll go to Copilot and talk to it about SAM, SOM, TAM, everything, and then build a business case, get some demographic information. It's really helpful for developing business cases too.
Yeah, and I think there's some ways around some of. So first of all, I think right now where agentic coding and vibe coding is perfect for is like your personal software. I think if like Dennis said, he had a problem, he just was like I had a couple of problems and I fixed them in a couple of days, right? Like I think where the sweet spot of it right now is your personal software, which is going to cause disruption in the SaaS world. So. And I think it's getting there slowly, but I think you have to kind of set up your environment in a way to help you succeed. So I think as product managers, we are just like drowning in documentation, for better or for worse. But I think in these kind of things, it really helps quite a bit. Is like, I think I spent like days and days, sometimes weeks in the planning stage, creating like PRDs, product requirement documents for people that don't know, like phases, roadmaps, things like that, and literally just having Claude make all of that for me. And I'm just saying, yeah, that works. So I have like documentation to shove, and then I take that and take it to other LLMs, be like, hey, look at this, doesn't make sense, and it's just kind of like this iterative process. And then from there, if you can start something from the ground up in a good spot, using like good, good coding engineering practices, like not making like a massive file that's like 3,000 lines, all those kind of things, then you can set yourself up for success. And I think we're getting close to, I know people do it, but they put it out there, but the sweet spot right now is just personal software. And and I think I tell everyone, like, hey, just find a problem that you have and just try to fix it, and just be like, hey, just see what happens. It's not going to hurt anything.
So you guys are having the best segue to the next question. So we're gonna start. But before I ask the next question, we have Kevin who has joined us. So why don't we have Kevin do a short 1 to 2 minute intro? I'm sure you guys already know him already, but for those who don't, Kevin, want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Really great to join you guys. Sorry for my tardiness on this one. Always good to get together with this crew right here. That they're usually up to no good, so I'm sure I'll get into a little bit of trouble with this. Kevin Walker, pharmacist by training, went into the hospital systems kind of early on, and then administration. Moved into the software space, particularly in hardware initially, and then into software, biomarkers, and health AI. Now I serve as the chief strategy officer for Performance Kitchen, a food is medicine company. So really excited to be here, Brian, and to have my very novice, juvenile answers to these things for the rest of the audience so they can hear all the brilliance of our colleagues above.
Well, it's great to have you, Kevin, as always. We're going to move on to the next question. It seems like you guys were getting into it as well. So again, a little bit of a lengthy question, not as lengthy as the previous one. I'm going to read this and then share the references in the chat. So it seems like AI obviously has been shaking things up quite a bit. And in McKinsey's recent Global Tech Agenda 2026 report, they note that AI is no longer seen as just an experiment. It has surpassed both cybersecurity and infrastructure modernization as companies' top area of investment. Maybe not surprise for the next 2 years, pointing to basically AI has become a business imperative. So we also see a lot of interesting topics nowadays that involve vibe coding at the intersection with product managers, is where you guys all come in. And then a very interesting thread that I saw recently that came out of Hacker News about a PM being asked on an interview at Google to demonstrate their vibe coding skills during the interview. So I'm very curious to know from each of you your thoughts as to how AI has influenced your day-to-day as a product manager. So Kevin, since you're here, we're going to start with you actually.
Man, so on a day-to-day basis, I'm gonna have to get a hold of my CTO to see if our vetting and screening includes a vibe coding review, with our new devs coming on board. But for the most part, I mean, AI just broadly, not just talking about vibe coding, I guess, for this particular segment here, there really isn't anything, Brian, that I'm not pushing some of my members of the team to be able to use it for contracting validation, for looking at market, shares, looking at wireframing, to be able to avoid the Confluence and Jira initial inputs, to just create something on the fly so we can look at it, feel it, touch it before building and saving some time. And so all of those things I think are, elements that are highly impactful. When it comes to investment, I am starting to look at products that we're pulling in and trying to think, how can I integrate AI with those products I'm pulling in? So if we're looking at communication platforms, integration platforms, what ways can I use Claude? Can I use OpenAI? Can I use Copilot or Microsoft team on one side, Gemini, I guess, team on another business? So all of those things I think are pretty imperative, Brian, when it comes to how are we using it, on a day-to-day basis inside of business. When it comes to product management and development, Zane already said it before with the PRD development. Like all of my team members are utilizing Claude or another LLM in some way, shape, or form to write these things out, and then use another set of team members, which happen to be more LLMs, to continue vetting them kind of down the line. So we're starting to see not only is it product placement, it's utilizing it for workflows and efficiencies, and also an extension of the team, what I'm seeing today.
Okay. So a lot of overlap here. Dennis, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I use it a lot for efficiency gain and prototyping these days. So let me kind of expand on that. In general, I'm a very verbose person, and I type slower than I speak. And so what I tend to do these days, especially when I need to do a PRD, is that I dictate into Cursor, and I have it help me organize my thoughts. I kind of brain dump into it without a lot of structure, and have it kind of organize the key points, which I will then turn that into a different document. And so that's been an efficiency gain just from the pure standpoint of like, I sometimes gets writer's block, and I don't know kind of like what is the first thing I want to talk about, and I just brain dump into AI and just let it like figure it out for me. And I can agree or disagree, but at least I have the content and I can move forward. So that's one piece of it. I do think we are seeing more in the product management land, product managers that do vibe code for a couple of reasons. One reason is I want to accelerate development, and some of that could be because I need to develop a proof of concept that engineering understands because they understand it from the point of view of code. And I've also done that here to demonstrate proof of concepts that we could leverage to integrate into our existing software. The key point of that, it's not code that I'm not pulling down our GitHub. I'm not using our code, but it's a proof of concept in its own isolation. Same with a user experience and design. I am also using Cursor to help me build out experiences. Now we can get into the world of MCPs, and Figma MCP, for example, has been really powerful in that because I can just plug in our design system and then it builds out kind of in the UI that I want, or at least using the right components, the right colors, the right shapes, the right placements. And that itself is a wildly different world than vibe coding was a year ago, where MCPs wasn't a thing. And so if you combine the notion of a prototype POC and then a Figma MCP-ified, that word, user experience, you're very close to delivering what might be a production feature. And so, always having those discussions engineering, because I don't want to overstep my bounds. I'm not an engineer. The key bias I want to call out that we kind of all talked about, this group is very tech savvy in the sense that all of us worked a little bit with code. And so myself included. And so, but I know kind of like where those roles kind of start and end. And so that's where I'm using AI today and vibe coding today.
Okay, the dictation case was very interesting. I like that. Other ones I've tinkered with. Zane, how does AI impact your day-to-day?
It has probably literally saved me weeks and months of time because for me, this is like usually been my workflow. I'm a very scattered brain person. I'm one of those people that will like literally go down every single rabbit hole. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know about it. And I'll just kind of go down those rabbit holes, right? And I usually take notes kind of in that fashion. So I have a note taking app that I found that works well for me because it kind of organizes things for me and I don't have to change the way I think. But basically what I do is I take all those notes that are tagged with that specific project or feature or whatever discussion it happens to be. I take that, dump it into our LLM, and I say, hey, can you summarize this for me and create features and stories and such, so on and so forth, like as I'm prompting it, right? And that's helped me quite a bit because it basically takes my thoughts and kind of synthesizes it in a way where normal human beings that are not me that can kind of handle it. And also helps me kind of churn out features and stories a lot better. Not only better, but also like, I shouldn't say speed is not the imperative. It's more so like just getting something there that others can understand. So that's the main way I do it. And I've created templates and stuff to where all the features and stories are always going to have the same amount of same information, same format, everything, right? So it helps me standardize a lot of my work, my output, I should say. The input is kind of all over the place, but the output is always going to be standardized. And then the other way I'm starting to use it is basically just making really simple HTML POCs, where it's like literally you just send the file, they just open it up, it opens up in their browser, and they can just kind of click through it. Not even messing with Figma MCPs, anything like that. Like it's just something simple I think anyone can do. Is like, and it doesn't have to be the right colors, whatever. It's just kind of like showing like, this is kind of what I'm thinking of. Don't worry about where the layouts are, the UI, whatever, but just the general idea of like, I want our users to come in, click on this button, see this thing, see this list, see this whatever, see this graph chart, whatever, and so on and so forth. And I think that kind of also helps anchor the conversations when you have with people, because as we all know, like if you don't come in with some sort of opinion, then everyone else has, and it just kind of goes off the rails. So I think we as product managers have to, that's kind of our job, to kind of sit in the center of it and kind of, at least it might be completely wrong, but at least it's a place to start at. So those are kind of ways that I start. And then also just random questions I'll ask here and there. I mean, just normal things here and there. But other than that, but that as a product, in terms of product, that's how I do it. And I also helps me write PRD, so on and so forth. So that's how I use it on a literal daily basis at my job.
Brian, do you mind if I ask a "is it just me" question?
What do you mean?
So I was just going to ask the guys. Whenever I do exactly what you're saying, Zane, with the POC, and Dennison, you said the exact same piece, I will build something, right? I'll vibe code it out, and it does not work at all. Like it is broken at the end. But I don't care. Like it's totally broken at the end. But all I'm trying to show is steps to get to the brokenness. I'm like, this is for the dev team to figure out how this. You want to see it? Do you ever do that, or is that just
No.
Mine actually works. Like it's pretty amazing.
I would get kicked off so fast.
The Claude works.
That's why I think like using a language like HTML and CSS is really helpful, because that's those are things that LLMs know really, really well. So you can kind of just go with that. And it's an easy way to transfer. You can just literally send the text document, and all they have to do is just open it up so maybe try that. So it's not broken.
I'm fully building in artifacts most of the time when I'm doing these. And so you build it out conceptually, you can click all the buttons, and at the end it produces nothing. And I'm like, of where it's going. Kevin, this is embarrassing, but here's what happened.
Figma's native AI integration is pretty nice too. You don't have to hook it up with the MCP, and it can do some beautiful designs
Claude,
for you.
yeah.
Yep.
But
is it Claude underneath? Did someone say that?
It's Claude underneath, yeah.
Oh, it's Claude. Oh, interesting.
Most of them are Claude.
That's why it's good.
Yeah.
Most of the UI ones, like everything, is basically Claude underneath the hub.
And David, you kind of started with this a little bit. Maybe targeted question back, if you have anything to add. How does AI impact your day to day?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I would consider myself like an AI first product manager. Like literally every single task I have, I ask myself how it can help me, how AI can help me. I guess I put it into sort of 5 buckets. I'll go through each one of those. So number 1, discovery. So we use the product operating model. If you're not familiar with it, Marty Kagan, it's a really great book. I recommend it. So part of that is like doing a lot of upfront de-risking. So if we have like if we're given a problem to solve, right, my team and I will get together and we will solution, right? We'll come up with like as many solutions as we can, whatever. And then we narrow it down. We bring these solutions to customers in storyboards. So that's the first thing I will do is I'll vibe code storyboards to bring to customers. Once we've finished up with like, this is resonating, this idea is resonating, then I will go back and I'll create a number of different prototypes. I'm not talking about hardware. Hardware is like we make hardware. It's kind of a different. I do stuff there too, but this is just software, right? So I'll create on average around 4 to 5 different prototypes, and each one is like some specific hypothesis I have about the application. And then we use Figma Make, and like Dennis said, it's all built in with our design system. So it comes out, you couldn't even tell the difference really. So then I bring that, I hand that over to the customers. I let them click, I give them the control. I watch them click, I compare, I ask questions, then I figure out. That's how I sort of narrow down to a place where like this is shovel ready. And we're ready to hand this over to, and by the time we've done that, it's like so pristine that it's just like really easy to implement. We also de-risked it pretty well because we know it's going to solve the customer's problem pretty much. The next thing I do is we recently re-platformed. So we had an old school like on-prem server that was 35 years old and very complicated system, and re-platforming it was very complicated. But we have to retrain all of our sales team. We have to retrain our internal stakeholders, our field team. We have to retrain our customers. So, and a lot of this stuff is like kind of like captured in my mind and other product managers' minds, right? So what I'll do is I'll have like, we have templates of like training templates. I'll upload those, and I just do stream of consciousness. and it just like will come out with a training document that's like pretty amazing. and I don't have to sit there and like proofread and all that stuff. It's pretty cool. PRDs, amazing for PRDs. I upload our template, tell it what, stream of consciousness. I'm a fast typer, so I don't need to dictate, but it comes out with a really good PRD. What else? I also, being a product manager, you need to really deeply know your product. You also really need to deeply know your data. So I'm in the weeds. We use Databricks as our ingress into our data assets, and Databricks has a genie in there that you can just, well, you can tag. I tag the data, so I explain, essentially create what you would consider like a semantic layer, so the system can understand what the data is. And then from there, I just tell it what I want. I'm like, oh, I want this run chart, or I want or I want to do this statistical analysis. I'll even like talk to, to Copilot and ask it like questions about like what statistical test. So like, for example, like I have to generate value, right? I have to show that this thing makes a difference for people. And I could do that by like looking over somebody's shoulder and timing them or whatever, if I'm looking for efficiency. But that's still going to be, potentially dependent on the person I'm viewing, and you can only view so many people. But what you can do with the data is you can do like real, like I would say, research quality statistical analysis with the data just using vibe coding. And it's amazing. I've tested it with Claude, ChatGPT, what I don't know what Databricks is under the hood, but it's they're all extraordinarily accurate, and all I have to do is just sit there and I review it a little bit, and I do QA, but it's really miraculous. That's a plug for data science. And then there's just like random stuff that, like, for example, our old device had 500 configurations, and we had like the definitions and everything, like living in a gigantic spreadsheet. And I just gave it to Copilot, and I was like, can you just clean this up for me? Just like barely prompted it, and it just came back with like a really nice pristine Excel. So it's like I'm learning something new every day that I can use AI for.
Okay. I actually did not expect many of these answers. These are like very interesting use cases. So thanks you guys for sharing. We're going to move in. I got to introduce a little bit of spice. So the next two questions do come with a little bit of spice. So hopefully we are ready for that. This is a nice teaser into it. So I'm going to read this next question. So Bryce is a startup product leader. He recently opined on this topic of PMs who vibe code, specifically about the opportunity cost of PMs who vibe code. I'll share that article afterwards. So he asked the question, if PMs are vibe coding, like yourselves, who is doing the PM work, like customer discovery, stakeholder management, and market research? He does note that there is a time and place for it, but concludes that the ROI may be better spent doing the core PM work instead. So before I go to each of you guys, I just want to very quickly see, with a show of hands, do you agree with what Bryce says? And if you do, just raise your hand.
It depends, I think. It's halfway.
Nice. Okay. We want to see some division.
Is a counterpoint to Bryce. The way he explained his discovery process with prototyping, like the product processes still exist. They're different now. They come in different forms and shape, but the core piece of stakeholders, like none of that goes away. So I just call that out, that Dave's example basically answered this question.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that's right. Oh, yeah. Who did I cut off? Yeah, I think that's right, because everything that I'm using it for is in some way related to, because I'm not like vibe coding new apps. I'm just using a tool to be more efficient, so that I could spend more time with my customers and be at hospitals and learn more about their pain points. Just kind of frees up time for me. If that's actually even true, I'm not sure, but because it's like kind of never ending. But I'm more efficient about certain things.
Yeah, and go ahead.
No, keep going.
No, I was gonna say, and even in the article, he kind of touches on all of this. Like, he starts it off like with a bang, and then kind of ends it with like, it kind of depends, right? I mean, I think is coming to the same conclusion that we're all coming to it right now. I mean, if you're trying to build something from the ground up, try to circumvent your engineering, yes, that is a bad use
Yeah.
of your time. But if you're doing something for like, hey, I want a clickable prototype to just get tests like for the UI UX purposes, and also I think when you see something in your head or on paper, it looks amazing, and even like on the Figma, it looks great. Like, oh my god, this is amazing. But when you start clicking through things, you're like, oh, that does not make sense. And I think that is part of our product function, right? Like the UI UX piece of it. And I think that's where this comes in. So I think like if you're vibe coding and you're circumventing your engineering, yes, that is a terrible use of your time. But if you're if I didn't even call it vibe coding, it's like literally part of your job. It's just something that you can get to 0 to 1 much quicker to your POC, right? And that's basically what we're trying to get to. And like what Dave said, like getting something in front of your customer to have them click through it while you're watching them, that is like the most invaluable piece that you can get to. And if you can get to that in like less than a week, rather than like
day.
3 like 2 sprints from now, I mean, why not, right? And also the overhead costs, like the like you don't have like dead code, you don't have to worry about all that kind of stuff. Like when you're going there, like Dave said, like it has been pressure tested, and then when you go to engineering, you're like, yo guys, we are you engineer can be like, okay, these guys aren't just coming in just like pulling it out of their rear end, like they really
Right,
tried.
yeah.
And like you can have a better conversation with them as well, and they can come in and be like, hey, this doesn't make sense or whatever, but that's fine. But like at least you can kind of jump that initial conversation of, whoa, we need to kind of think about this or whatever, like I don't know if this is going to work.
Yeah,
Go
ahead, Des.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Kevin. I'll go after.
Oh, perfect. I think that in general, like the ideation and the meeting fatigue is so real. Like for us to be able to take something from being, hey, great, I've got to talk to these many stakeholders before I can even present something to the main stakeholder that I actually have to move it forward with. And I think the vibe coding piece there might be a saving grace inside of it. If we're doing our wall walks, if we're doing our scrums, to be able to go from those and actually ideate to something that can be viewed by the entire team. I don't disagree that there can be some, I mean, it's like any role, like you can always add on more to someone's role. And instead of someone else, that being their responsibility, now you've just added more onto your overall plate. And so I don't disagree that there is something that has to be sacrificed if you're bringing in more vibe coding, more ideation that's going on the product team. But at the same time, the product team with a goal to be able to be as effective and efficient as possible, because you have so many other things that are on the back burner. I feel like that allows you to take something off of your plate to go, I don't have to wait for that meeting in 2 more days or in 3 more hours to be able to talk to design and all these other stakeholders before I can get something out for the rest of the team to view. So that would be my only slight pushback to what Bryce was saying inside of there, is just there is some significant efficiencies because ideation fatigue is very real.
I'll take a slightly different lens to it, and it's really around taking vibe coding away. Why does product management have so much discovery, documentation, writing, all of that? The reason is that generally, if you get it wrong, you've wasted design resources, you wasted engineering resources, and it's insanely expensive, right?
Yep.
And so, like, from a vibe coding standpoint, none of that discovery goes away. But I think Zane kind of captured the essence of it, which is like, in traditional product processes, you write up all this stuff, you get all this alignment, we agree to spend X millions of dollars to build this, and then you go to design, and then they the timeline is insanely long. Getting a prototype out there, 5 prototypes to Dave's example, getting to what is realistically a solution, because what the writing doesn't do, and maybe what design doesn't even get to, is like all those weird, funky edge cases that you didn't think about because you're writing on paper or, Confluence. So like getting a prototype, you can see the user interaction patterns right away, and you're basically circumventing risk. And so like the way I see it is this accelerates the product development lifecycle towards the most likely best solution. And it actually just cuts the outliers and reduces the risk of building something incorrect if you approach it in the right way. The wrong way to approach it is the product manager, like, I'm going to vibe code this and ship this into like production myself. But the right way to do is perhaps like Dave's example, I'm going to do 5 prototypes, and rather than like us reading a document as a group, we play with the prototypes as a group and find which is the best solution that we think fits, what we want to do. And from that standpoint, you probably don't need to write as much. You probably don't need to do as much discovery. Like, all of those processes have now just like been short circuited a little bit because product managers can develop these prototypes and go directly to basically like a light UAT and then coming back to the process in an accelerated way.
Yeah, and if you really look into like what product, because I mean every place you go, product management is different, right? Like, over one company, it's completely different across the board. But the main thread that's across everything around product management is risk mitigation. You have to prioritize. You make sure you prioritize the right things. You make sure that it's what the users want. Are they willing to pay for it? All this stuff falls under risk mitigation. And if we can decrease that risk as much as possible, then spending. And I think people will be really, I think eyebrows would raise if people really understood how much it costs to even push like a simple feature. It can be in the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars to just get something simple through. And
if that turns out to not be the right solution,
exactly, yeah,
it can ruin your business.
Yeah, exactly. So the more you can mitigate risk, the better you'll be, and the more champions you'll have with you, right? Like your internal stakeholders will be like, okay, cool, yeah, this makes sense. We have all this data points and all these things, and like, yep, let's go for it. And then if you hit any roadblocks, then you have something to stand on, right? Like, I think that's one of the problems that people run into is you think you know what they want, but you don't have any hard evidence. And when somebody pushes back on you, you really can't push back. Well, it kind of makes sense, right? So but yeah.
What we do is we have our engineers and designers all in my discovery calls. So they're all there hearing it together. So then when we go to implement, everyone's heard the same thing, and they've also understand the business and the user context really, really well because they've sat through all these user discovery meetings. And it helps. I think it really helps to fail quickly, right? You have this sort of innovation funnel and you have all these ideas, and that's a good thing. The reason I hesitated about, yes, it's making me more efficient, but now I feel like, I don't know how you all feel, but now I feel like, I mean, there's still tons of work because now I'm just doing more prototyping. Like, I'm doing a lot more discovery. I'm finishing it faster, but then I just have another thing to do.
So yeah, but I think you're getting to solutions that you can actually execute faster, even if the work is more, because now you're testing more effectively different ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general life, the more time you have, the more you'll fill it with things, right?
Right.
I think that's just the nature of also the job itself, right? I mean, there's always something in the back burner, like, oh, okay, we're gonna look at it in Q3. Oh, well, I can kind of pull it up now. I can start doing these kind of discovery stuff now. I think in the end, it is it's a net positive. But yeah, I can definitely see like it being people being taken advantage of if you are a little bit too efficient. But yeah.
So 2 things. One is, I think if we were to rename this live stream, it would be doing vibe coding right as a product manager. I think you guys are a different type of group. The second thing is, the next question is probably I would think, persona of PMs that Bryce was talking about. So I'm going to move into the next question here. Little less lengthy, but I'm going to read it. So as vibe coding becomes more mainstream for the non-technical user, the criticism from our technical colleagues, primarily software engineers, has become much more visible in various forums like Blind, Reddit, YouTube. So there's lots of different posts. I'll share them in the chat in just a bit, called my PM who vibe codes is pissing me off. My boss vibe coded a full product and I'm paying the price. And then the last one is, please stop, by the maintainers. And those kind of examples largely describe the negatives of vibe coding, which may include bad code or a lot of what people call AI slop. So it could be unsafe, difficult to maintain, and needs fixing by the engineering team. Now, we all know that LLMs have some degree of hallucinations, and then there's always various degrees of safety. My question to all of you guys is, what is your general thoughts on the safety and usage of LLMs? So we're start actually with David.
It's a good question because I don't deploy LLMs. I don't use them in any way that could be harmful to anybody. So I'm using them for like prototyping, right? So, if I take a step back, if I were to use them, I guess it's more hypothetical, I would do like probably a significant amount of testing to make sure that, and have guardrails in place to make sure that anything that we were using was not hallucinating. And I also wanted to point out, like, a counter argument to that, those Reddit posts is you can have human generated sloppy code maybe more easily, honestly. So, so there's that.
Maybe I should elaborate on the question. It was maybe a little poorly worded too. So safety and usage is definitely one thing. It doesn't seem like it applies that much in David's case, but maybe a scenario where it could apply is the AI slop aspect. So you can have AI write code that's functional, works fine, but as you grow it and write more complex code or build on top of it, you start producing worse and worse code known as the AI slop. So in that case, does that apply at all, David?
It doesn't apply to me because I'm not responsible for the code base. That would be our engineering team.
Mhm.
I would have to defer to them on their perspective. I know that we use LLMs to support our engineers, and I have heard very positive feedback about it. So I don't have the expertise to answer the question.
I mean,
Go ahead, Dave.
No, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I generally, I think the biggest, when you read through those things, the biggest thing is, like, again, you're overstepping your bounds, right? I think, like, there's one thing that, I mean, we were all pharmacists, right? We always knew what lane we had to be in. In the end, we were not the doctors, right? We gave our suggestions and we kind of had to step away. We could fight as hard as we wanted to and document, but we cannot physically write the order and do, whatever. In the end, they're the gatekeepers of that. And I think that's what a lot of these people are going through, is like, hey, what is the point of an engineer? The engineer is supposed to take what product gives them, product design, whatever, all the product team gives them, and turn that into something that's usable, that we can ship, so on and so forth. And then, like so I can, it would piss me off as an engineer if PM is coming to me like, oh, here's some code, deal with it. Like, hey, I'm walking away. And the same thing with, if your boss is not a technical founder and they're like, hey, they hired you. First of all, they hired you for a job. And now they're like, hey, I just built this over the weekend. Here you go. Can you fix this for me? And walk away. Like, not knowing what kind of crap that they put in there. And then the other thing with safety and LLMs that I think people don't realize is when you're using, like, for example, like at our work, we're not allowed to use anything else. We have our own instance of ChatGPT on Azure that is trained on all of our things, right? But OpenAI just recently, it was a couple of months ago, where they had an exploit where you could see everyone's chat messages and everything that could go in there. Like, there are actual ramifications for you putting in company secrets into. I just dropped my back.
You're back.
Yeah. No, but yeah, OpenAI just was causing me. Sam Altman's like, yo.
He's sensitive.
They have government contracts now, so they could be. No, I'm kidding. No, but I mean, there's something too, I think people don't realize, is what you're typing into those chat windows and chat boxes is not private. It can be leaked, and you have to be very careful as to what you put in there, and especially when it's like company secrets, and that will get out, and they did get out, and and so that's kind of it. Like, I think that's kind of what my thought process was here. Like, I would also be pissed off as an engineer from both of those articles, and also from the safety aspect, outside of just the sloppy code and all those things. is the actual usage of the LLM and how you're using it and where you're using it, because there's a lot of exploits that have already come up.
Okay, throw it to you, Dennis.
Yeah, slop it can be defined in a couple of ways. Like, is it just sloppy, poor code? And I think generally these days you're not really going to have sloppy code, especially if you use a good model like Cloud Code. But where it does get sloppy and where it does create problems is really around, does anyone on your team understand the code that is being written to a way where they can troubleshoot should things go wrong? And if you as a product manager or a leader are bringing that to engineering and saying like, just, hey, why don't you, I built this in a weekend, why does it take you 6 sprints to get this out to production? That's because your prototype, your vibe code, doesn't consider authentication, doesn't consider, for example, HIPAA, doesn't consider the unique ways your organization needs to build scalable code, doesn't consider your microservices and your architecture principles. And so the slop it creates isn't that it doesn't work, it's that you will be continuously behind in tech debt as you try to scale your business with this code in place. There's a certain company that starts with an M that, since the new year has had like 3 or 4 worldwide outages. It's also the same company that pushes their developers to, build AI first. And so there's some correlation there. I can't say if there's causation, but, that's where the issue lies, is that not that it's code that isn't good per se. No one understands that how that code fits into your broader architecture and ecosystem of services. And they don't know how to troubleshoot it, because if you're just having AI write code, it's probably the first time you're seeing it when you're on like a Sev2 P2 like outage. And so
that was really well said. Oh,
yeah, go ahead. That's where I see slop come in. I don't think it's bad code. I think it's just incompatible with your organization unless you put human eyes on it.
Yeah, that was really well said, Dennis. If someone were to bring a vibe coded thing of my product, I would think first, you have no idea what it takes to actually deploy software at scale. Like, but at the same time, I would probably say, thank you. Now I really, understand. I think these consider these things sort of like prototypes. I think they're really good for communication. So I think you could look at whatever your CEO gave you and say like, oh, I see what you want. I can see. Let me like investigate that to see if that's that's going to solve a user problem, whatever. But yeah, that's a really good point, Dennis, about the that thing would not work properly in your own ecosystem.
Yeah, I think the audience right now is mainly clinicians, right? And so if we're given an AI generated intervention regimen, there's a lot of slop in that. Like, there's a lot of concern with the way it was developed, the way it was written, the way it was put down. And there's not a whole lot of difference, for the engineering team on their concerns with us just pushing out, I think, code their direction if the sole purpose of it was for it to go into production. But that's not how it's used, right? We're giving that to our code base engineers that are maintaining our code base, that are looking for any of the security-based risks or the HIPAA-related risks, just like we're giving our Claude-based intervention criteria to a pharmacist and a physician to go, here's the reason why that doesn't make sense, or here's why we can't actually do that within this particular use case because of X, Y, and Z thing. That doesn't mean that it doesn't provide a good starting point, though, or good validation components or good reference components. Like, there's lots of value from it overall. But I think when you talk about safety and usage of LLMs, like there's a direct comparator to clinical world versus vibe code world, is what the product is at the end when the patient comes to you with the Google search of what my drug regimen should be. Like, you take that with a grain of salt. And I'm sure my engineering team does the same thing every time I provide them with, hey, we should build it like this, check this code out. They're like, okay, that's nice, but here's what we're gonna have to do. But at least they have an idea now.
Yeah, and the other thing is like safety and security, just from like a credentialing standpoint. I mean, there's been so many exploits for vibe coded apps where the environment variables are just sitting in the code base. Your API keys are sitting there. I mean, your users are hacked. All these things because engineering is going through like a very rigorous security process, right? And that's not really built into like these vibe coding platforms. Like Claude just came out with like their security suite like just a week ago. I mean, so this is very new to them as well. I mean, you can prompt them and be like, hey, make sure all these things, become a white hat hacker, go through all this stuff. But people that are vibe coding are not thinking in that way. They're just thinking 0 to 1 as quickly as possible. And and to Dave's point, yeah, you can use that as a starting point. Like your CEO comes like, oh, I would love to do that, but I think the people writing those posts are dealing with CEOs like, yo, this needs to go into production now. Figure it out. I want it done. I did it in a weekend. Why is it taking you 3 weeks, right? I mean, I think that's where I think that's one thing that engineering, when you talk to them, are struggling with, is just the unrealistic expectations that are put onto them, because Zan in his basement at midnight is putting together this app in a weekend, and he's like, why is it taking you guys 3 sprints? Like, what's the no, it's because I don't care. It's living in my home local server. Only person that can hack it is really just me, and it doesn't need to be secure. It doesn't need to be safe. It doesn't need to be anything. It just needs to do what I need it to do, right? Versus when you're in like a Fortune 500 company, when you have millions and sometimes billions of dollars on the line, you have to think a little bit further than that weekend session in your basement.
So we are 4 minutes over. I know that some folks have time. Like I know David has a good amount of time. But Kevin, just out of respect for you, do you still have a few minutes? Okay. We only have one more question. Okay. One more question to go. I am surprised, though, we didn't get deeper into what Kevin started talking about with the clinical aspects of it. I think I actually spend more of my time there thinking about the appropriateness and safety, but that's a whole different discussion. So we'll move on to the last question, which I think is supposed to be a good note, positive vibes here, pun intended. I'm going to read this off, okay? So Sam Altman tweeted about Peter Steinberger joining OpenAI. I'm sure many of us have heard of this, after he vibe coded OpenClaw, which is an open source autonomous AI agent. Now, from a pure outcomes perspective, and just ignoring the security issues for just a second, one may argue that if we're optimizing for creating something useful and delivering value, I think this is a pretty good example on a very large scale. Now, just to conclude the panel here, wanted to ask each of you 2 questions. One, what would you say to the product manager who has never vibe coded before, but wants to learn and not sure where to start? And then 2, because I'm sure we have a large pharmacy audience, what would you say to the pharmacists who are interested in transitioning to product roles in this very unique era of AI and vibe coding? So actually, I'll start with you, Zane.
My thing is, if you've not started vibe coding, I mean, I've been saying this for years. I think like just start. I mean, like I said, like I think I said in the beginning, is pick a problem that's been annoying you, and you can't really find a problem, or it's too expensive to solve, and just make sure it's very focused, hyper focused. Don't like try to make it super broad. Pick a very hyper focused problem, and either spin up like Claude Code subscription is $20 a month. You don't have to don't have to just do it monthly. A GitHub Copilot subscription is $12 a month. There's a lot of tutorials out there on YouTube to set these things up. If you need help, honestly, just reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff. I would love to help anyone out. And seriously, this is an open invitation. You can slide into my DMs and like, can you help me set this up? I would love to do that for people, because I think that oh crap moment when you first see your thing in your browser in like localhost 8000, you're like, whoa, I built that and I can click through it and I can just jump a file. And like that is like that aha moment. And once people get to that aha moment, it just snowballs from there. And I think that's like, so, but I say everyone should just do it. In terms of getting into tech, I mean, I haven't, not shameless plug, I have a newsletter. It's kind of died a little bit. I'm hopefully bringing it back, actually talking about like, setting up AI agents to help you code and build products and so on and so forth. But I've talked about how to get into tech, a couple articles about that. I can send them to you, Brian, if you want to link those later on. But basically, Dennis helped me quite a bit in that process. He basically told me that he instilled confidence in me because it took me about 3 years to do it. It should not take you that long, mainly because I was kind of all over the place. But finding people that believe in you, that are doing the job, it helps quite a bit. Network, and there's a reason why people say the same things over and over again, because it works. The way I got my job is was in our group, 2 people had emailed me the job. I went to go apply for it. I couldn't find it anymore. I found the email of the hiring manager, emailed them on a whim saying, hey, I know this job doesn't exist anymore, but I would love to talk, or if you have future jobs. And I would hear these stories all the time, and I'd be like, that never happened. But I'm literally that person right now standing in front of you. So go out on a limb. There's a lot of people out there that are willing to help you, and they will help you a lot. You just need to don't be like, hey, I would love to pick your brain. Be very pointed when you reach out to people. Be like, hey, I'm so-and-so. This is my experience. This is what I want to do. I saw that you have this experience. Could you help me with X, Y, and Z? Once the other person on the other end knows what you're reaching out to them for, then they have a better idea. Because if you get a message saying, hey, how's it going? Can I pick your brain? About what? Like, I don't really know. Like, it's kind of overwhelming for the other person. So that's just my advice.
Seem to get a lot of those. Kevin, why don't you share your thoughts here?
Oh man. So if you've never done it before, like, what's the first step? I mean, there's this wild thing called the internet, and there's a lot of YouTube videos just to take a peek and see what people are doing. And I think the same advice that I had. So I watched a CS50. Have you guys watched the Harvard?
Yeah, CS50 is amazing. Yeah.
So I think it's amazing, and it's a good way for you to feel like you can jump in. I was watching that with my 6-year-old the other day, and he told me, Daddy, my head's starting to hurt because there's a lot of... I
made my kids watch it too.
You had your kids watch it. There you go.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really good intro, some really good lecturers to be able to bring in some concepts of coding overall, but also just vibe coding. There's a lot of basic intros. I'd also say, because this is oftentimes the level that I'm doing it at, it's not true like Claude code utilization, but there's already free abilities for you to use artifacts within Claude, the way it's already built, that you can pull out code bases from artifacts and look at it. So you can see, I'm trying to build this, and you can see the way the code is being written. One fun thing to do that's I think a starter for you, especially if you have kids, is have them prompt their own game. And then they can...
I was going to say the same thing.
Instead of Claude, which I think is a really good experiment for you to think intellectually, how can I apply this within business cases, use cases, clinically, et cetera. And I think your second one, Brian, was your unique pharmacist, basically. What would you say to a pharmacist and they're interested in transitioning to the product role? Like Zane was saying, I don't feel like I have a whole lot more to add to what Zane was saying there, other than get a hold of some folks that you trust that are doing it currently, that you think could, either one, provide you a little bit of insight or a little bit of opportunity. But I won't belabor it too much further, apart from just echoing what Zane said about networking. Like, I've run into all of these guys, and we live nowhere close to each other. And so knowing people and being able to connect is pretty vital, I think, within this particular space, especially that just because a company has a product manager doesn't mean they're going to have 14 more product managers. It could be that you're in another company or another startup. And so having those connections can be massive.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. David, would you share some?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Kevin said, yeah, it doesn't have to be a problem. Like Kevin said, it could be a game. I've had my daughter sit on my lap on like a snowy Saturday. There's like 0 degrees out there. We have nothing else to do, so we built an app. We built a game together. It was super fun. We used Lovable. So it's like dirt cheap. So that's a really good place to start. In terms of like getting into product management, so I would say I hustled, right? Like it was a journey. I was in hospital administration, and I hadn't really thought about moving into the vendor space until I came to a point where I felt like I wasn't solving as many problems as I wanted to solve. I felt like I was just keeping the lights on, and that's where it occurred to me that I should think about working for a vendor, because then I would have actual like resources, engineers, designers to help me solve problems. So I started first with I would say having fundamentals in informatics was really helpful for me, because I implemented Epic twice. I will never do that again, but it's similar to product management in a way, because you have to talk to stakeholders, you have to design workflows. And Epic is its own program, right? But there's customization you can do to make sure that the workflow works for the user. I also did a fellowship in user-centered design. I took a data science course online, Data Camp, and then because I did a fellowship in user-centered design, I did a lot of networking. In Boston, we have a part of the fellowship was working with our local incubator, which is Mass Tech Health Challenge. So that's also a good resource if you have an incubator or university that does innovation. Good to connect there. And I met a lot of people in the Boston health tech space just from being part of the networking. So that's a good avenue.
Okay. Thanks, David. Kevin, I mean, not Kevin, Dennis. I know his battery might die.
Getting
So
late.
Dennis, yeah.
We got 10%. Let's see how long I can go on for before my world shuts down. But you had the two questions, and I'll answer both of them at the same time, which is like, should product managers do vibe coding, and then how does clinicians such as pharmacists get into product management? And I think both of them are similar in the sense that if you're not vibe coding, you should do that now. I think Dave's answer around lovable is great, because one of the greatest barriers is like setting up your environment, like cursor and all that garbage, like compiling locally. Like no one wants to do that. Dependency trees, none of that garbage. So like anything.com, Lovable, Gemini, AI Studio, all of those will let you build apps with just prompts on a web interface, and you'll never have to install dependencies or anything locally. And that gives you the experience. In terms of, all of you product managers, pharmacists, clinicians have pain points you want to address, have interesting use cases that don't have their needs met today in the market. And just like I built a random little credit card app over the weekend, you can think about how you can build with vibe coding. What that really does, and this is more now specifically for pharmacists, is, and I'm actually hiring for roles where I need people with healthcare experience. And what I'm looking for is people who have built, and then people who have impact from what they built. And so those are just like very key requirements. And getting started with vibe coding is a great way to get there. All of Zane and what he said around the networking, super important. So I'm not going to go into that. But I think the other aspect of it is developing a skill set where the future of workforce, I think, is going to be AI native, or at least AI supported. And so starting that there already gets you ahead. The industry as a whole, I'll say, with layoffs going on, is super saturated from product management. But from a standpoint of clinicians getting into product management, incredibly rare skill set. And so, as you're talking to these people, as you're building these, prototypes on the side, and you can speak to, your ideation and maybe why you built it in a certain way, make sure you focus and emphasize, especially for these roles that require healthcare experience, what you bring to the table as a clinician. Because in the end of the day, I think there's a notion of a generalist PM, but then specialist PMs, like yourselves as pharmacists, have a lot of value that generalist PMs take a long time to upskill on. And that's kind of where you pivot your story, and that's your ingress into these roles. Competition is tough and high right now, but I think bringing this niche skill set, pursuing roles that match and are healthcare adjacent, are really helpful, because they help you shine in your domain knowledge, in your command of influence and expertise that a generalist PM may not have. And so that's what I would say.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis. And thank you all for answering the questions. We're going to turn over to live streams now. And if any of you guys have to drop, feel free to drop at any time, actually. I'm just going to start going through the questions, and then free for all, whoever has a response and answer, we can jump right into it. But we're going to start with two questions that we received prior to the live stream, and then we're going to work down the list of the live stream. Okay, so why don't we start with the very first question, which you can see on the screen here, but it is from Kevin Land. And the whole question actually is, I guess this is my realm of work. I know a lot of product managers work with a lot of teams in a company. How do you keep signal to noise ratio low and so the product launch will be on time for the market need aligned with business goal? I always find this type of soft skill different by person and the tool you use to make things a lot more efficient. And it seems there's no solution to this. And free for all, I interpret this as just how do you make all this more efficient, considering all the different cross-functional work that you guys do as PMs. So open it up.
I'll start just because I had a couple launches that are time crunched. I think there is a difference between product vision and what you would really love to build if you had infinite resources and time in the world, and then building to what I think is realistic to launch with. And so the primary tension in product management usually is what is your time to value and what is the quantified impact of that value. And I think product managers that have this issue are generally trying to build more towards a vision, and you got to be a little bit more cutthroat if your business is dependent on a product launch on time. Now, that's different across businesses where maybe a product launch on time isn't as important. And so you do have to kind of understand your environment. But if the KPI for you as a product manager and maybe your team is like, you need to launch X by Y, then there's a trade-off that has to be had and trade-off that you have to communicate around. Well, we had visions and we had user research that showed X, and that can only be delivered by this timeline. But if this is a shorter timeline, we can deliver this type of value. And I think that's where those are tough discussions to be had, but that's what makes great product managers great, is making the right trade-offs along the way to still deliver value.
Yeah, and I think this has been touched on before, is having user feedback early and often is invaluable, because that also helps you kind of figure out what is valuable and what is not valuable to the paying customer, right? Because they're the ones paying for it, not you, right? And I think that's one thing that I needed to also